Well, joining me now from Miami, Florida is John Cardillo. He's a co-host on Newsmax TV and a former NYPD officer. In London, we have Bryn. He's the director of Brand Finance, a consulting firm that estimates the value of brands. And completing our panel from Chicago is Jamal Green. He's a community leader and candidate for mayor. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us on the Newsmakers. John Cardillo, let me begin with you. How do you feel about the Kaepernick Nike campaign?
Look, I'm not a fan of Colin Kaepernick for obvious reasons, but the free market is going to decide what happens to Nike. The day after they announced the campaign, their stock took a significant hit, started to creep back. I think they lost about $4 billion in market cap the next day. Anecdotally, I've had members of my audience call into the show, email me, tell me that my own sister-in-law was at the Macy's in New York City, the large Macy's, the big one, and told me that the Nike boutique within Macy's was empty. She went into then another athletic shoe store, said that no one was buying Nikes. So in the short term, it appears that there's a bit of backlash, but I think it's too early to tell. I'm not a fan of it. I think there were better choices than Colin Kaepernick for Nike to pick. But look, if they were looking for attention, they certainly got it. It's just going to be seen whether it was good attention or bad attention for the brand.
Jamal Green, attention-seeking or principled?
Well, I think that they have a great marketing team. I usually don't agree with my other colleague here, but what I will say, and I would disagree on one point, is I don't think that they're going to take a big fall by cashing in on Kaepernick. But I do think that we should think about the fact that they have been strategically silent since they had him under contract since 2011. And so why is now the time after, he has been branded, this terror to society since now. So I think they have a great marketing team. I think that they are, cashing in and trying to make a lot of money off of this. But I applaud them for, even taking on this heat. So that's what I will say.
Okay, Bryn Anderson, believe in something, even if it means sacrificing everything. I watched the ad, fantastic ad. I mean, it was very stirring and moving. Good job behind it, whoever was involved. Is Nike going to take a hit? I mean, if it was woke washing, as some would call it, or trying to inject themselves into not just corporate social responsibility, but corporate social justice responsibility, and we're seeing them potentially taking a hit, is that a failure then? Have they messed this up?
Well, like we've already heard, there will always be an expected hit in the short term. I think we've already seen the images of a number of consumers burning their Nikes. It's already been mentioned, a 3% drop in their share price, which is like a short-term effect. But, there's always a risk of a company, the risk to a brand when a company has an opinion, takes an opinion, particularly around sort of social and political causes. One would suggest, though, but getting behind a cause of equality and togetherness, rarely sees a negative impact on the business over the longer term. Let's not forget that the Nike brand is a brand that was built up around sort of rebellion, I guess. There was the time when the NBA sort of stopped the use of Air Jordans and they put Michael Jordan at the front of their campaign. At the time, a black man probably seen as high risk. And they're doing the same thing here. So the parallels can be drawn. Yeah,
John, rebellion. That's an interesting word by Bryn Anderson. Trump is still against him vis-a-vis the NFL and the kneeling and the actual protest that started everything off. He called him a disgrace. He called him unpatriotic. He said maybe he should find a country that works better for him. So you have that, and you have what could be considered the NFL establishment, because Kaepernick has an active collusion grievance against the NFL. So you're going to get a lot of young people who are going to support the rebel, right, John?
Yeah, possibly. Look, I have to disagree with Bryn. Michael Jordan was not a controversial figure when he was named the face of Air Jordans. He was beloved. He had approval ratings in the United States at like the 98 to 100% range. Michael Jordan was a national icon. He was beloved by people that weren't even sports fans because he was a phenomenal athlete, arguably the greatest of all time, and he was apolitical. People admired his work ethic. They admired the way he handled himself off the court, scandal-free. So I don't think you can compare Colin Kaepernick in any way, shape, or form to Michael Jordan. Look, the other problem with Kaepernick, and you mentioned the collusion case, is everybody's assuming that it's this cabal of owners. What no one ever talks about are the other players who might not want Kaepernick on teams. He was a mediocre player at best in the end. His numbers really only bear out him being a backup quarterback at best. But other players who now have the limelight, whose merchandising dollars are soaring, they might be lobbying team ownership saying, hey, if this guy comes on the team, it no longer becomes about my athletic ability, no longer becomes about my philanthropic endeavors off the field. It becomes all about him. He had his chance. His time has passed. We don't want to play with this guy. And nobody's examining that. You know, athletic ability is only one reason why you make it into the professional leagues, right? A lot of it has to do with the way you handle yourself off the court, your public image. All of that matters to the bottom line of the team. So, yeah, maybe there'll be some younger people who buy the shoes because he's perceived as a rebel. But by the same token, every day Kaepernick isn't playing, he becomes less and less relevant to true sports fans. That's just the nature of pro sports. And to say that pro sports is somehow inherently racist, when the vast majority of NFL and NBA players are African-American, that's just a stupid assertion, quite candidly. To me, Kaepernick is nothing more than a far-left grandstander who's looking for relevance.
But isn't the argument that among the vast majority of players who happen to be African-American, you have them wanting to do something authentic to them and something that means a lot to them by peacefully protesting before a game? It only becomes a problem, the vast majority of players become a problem once they don't follow the script.
Well, hold on. It's not a script, though. I have no problem with somebody protesting. You can kneel. But if you're going to kneel, do it in a public place. An NFL stadium and on an NFL team, that's a privately owned entity. Sure, you can do it, but you can't cry foul if your boss fires you. Right now, I'm doing this from an auxiliary little Skype studio in my network's offices. If I were to do something and form some protest in their offices and they fired me, well, that's my problem. Your First Amendment rights are sacrosanct in the public square. They don't extend to your employer's property. That's the popular misconception. That's what many of us who are conservatives have a problem with, the property rights of the owners and the fans. The fans don't like this. These athletes are way overpaid. The NFL is now the highest paid.
You don't like it. Let me ask you, let me add to that then and ask you, would you not buy Nike sneakers now?
Look, I never wore Nike sneakers anyway because they don't fit me well. I'm a fan of some other brands, but I would be inclined not to patronize Nike, yes, because of what they're doing with Kaepernick.
Jamal Green, chime in.
You know what? What I will say is you know, they should be protesting the Catholic Church, all right, of all these different cover-ups.
Hey, look, we agree on that, Jamal. We agree on that.
But you want to protest Nike? I think we got other issues that we need to boycott here, and you probably got some Nike shoes on right now. All right, listen, I'm not gonna go there with you, but let me go back. First things first is that Colin Kaepernick, it was proven that he was better than a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL, and he was definitely blackballed and wasn't picked up by any team. So you saying that he wasn't athletic enough to be in the NFL is not technically true. Number two is you're talking about his it's not true. It's not. We looked at the numbers. You can go back to the reports. Number two,
Jamal, numbers don't lie. He was a second string guy.
You had the time. You had enough time. You had the most time here.
But beyond.
Number two. Okay. Number two is you talking about relevance. When you talk about Colin Kaepernick coming out of the NFL. Well, let's talk about his relevance. Let's talk about the $1 million that he has contributed to charities across this country, where a lot of that money came right here to Chicago, to Asada's daughters and different organizations doing community work. All right? Talk about
Assata Shakur, the cop killer, the fugitive cop killer who's on the FBI. Who's on the FBI? No. Tell the audience who she is. Tell the audience who she is. She's a fugitive on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list for murdering New Jersey State Trooper.
I'm talking about an organization.
Cop killer.
I'm not talking about Asada Shakur here. I'm talking about an organization.
You just said Asada's daughter.
So what that it was named after her? Let's not go there. Number two.
She's a cop.
Let me finish. So let's talk about the charitable work that he has done. All right. Now, I already said that I believe that Nike is tapping into the $1.2 trillion buying power that Black people have in this country, in which if we boycotted one day and stood in the house and not paid for anything, the economy would crash. So I do believe that Nike is buying into that, and this is a marketing ploy to get dollars. But if you want to talk about the kneeling, that's a different story. I think those are two different topics here. He had a right to protest. He did not. He should not have been blackballed. There's been no other organization from the NBA on down, and where players protested, have been blackballed. But people from the right and the conservative party, I think that they have some other real concerns and deeper concerns within themselves that they need to address.
Okay, let me bring in Bryn Anderson. Hold on. Okay, hold on. We're going to come back. We're going to come back to you, John.
Call it what you want.
John, we're going to come back to you in a minute. Let me bring in Bryn Anderson here, because cop killers has been brought up as a theme. I'm not going to talk about Assata Shakur and whether people like her or hate her. She's in Cuba right now. But there was a comment that came out of the National Association of Police Organizations, and they were among those calling for a boycott of Nike. They said in their statement on their website that the inclusion of Mr. Kaepernick in Nike's Just Do It ad campaign also perpetuates the falsehood that police are racist and aiming to use force against African Americans and persons of color. So, Bryn, at the heart of all of this, you have the Black Lives Matter movement. Kaepernick felt very passionately about this. That was at the heart of his protests, about the killings, he believed, disproportionately of African-American people at the hands of police. That's what a lot of people believe, right? So if you're Nike and you see a cop association come out with a statement like this, what are you thinking, Bryn?
Well, it's, it affects you. It's squeaky bum time. Listen, Nike know their customers. They've been around. It's a brand, a well-established brand that's been around a long time. They have the ability to partner with the world's leading athletes within the world of sport. It's already been mentioned. Is Kaepernick the best quarterback the NFL's ever seen? Arguably not. Will he get back into the NFL? We don't know. But this is all about sponsoring him or partnering with him under a new platform. He's able, it's already been mentioned, he's able to reach a new audience. And at the heart of this is the cause. It is the, it is the just cause that Nike are behind, rather than taking an individual within the sporting world.
And Jamal, just looking at it from a purely sort of marketing perspective and knowing your audience and what resonates with people, as I mentioned earlier on, I watched that ad on Kaepernick's, it was posted on his Twitter, right, by Nike. Yeah. Extremely moving. I mean, you didn't just have him. You had Serena Williams. You had people who had overcome all sorts of adversity, people, beat brain tumors and so forth. And I compare it with something that came out last year. I think it was Kendall Jenner's ad, where she was handing out Pepsis to cops and protesters at a Black Lives Matter march, right? It seemed tone deaf, it seemed stupid, it was absolutely absurd, and everybody just sort of became friends because they drank Pepsi. Did Nike just get it right? Did they just strike the right tone when it came to hitting that sweet spot between playing politics, but also just inspiring people and tapping into something that people want to talk about?
Yeah, well, you know what? We can go in history and look at how many corporations have tapped into movements around this country, especially movements when it comes to minority communities in this country. They want to tap into their buying power. I said it just a little bit ago. $1.2 trillion that Black people spend in this country. We spend almost 44%. And so, knowing that we do, a lot of corporations have always took advantage of that. And I think that, their marketing team is technically doing that at this moment. While I think it's great that it's great for Colin, knowing that he's not in the NFL, I think it's great that we can start conversations with these commercials and these ads. But what I will say is that I don't think that we should, run out and buy Nikes because of it, because that's basically buying into what they're trying to do. But I think that this needs to further the conversation and really talk about things that solutions on how to progress this country.
And talking about solutions about how to progress this country, John Cardillo, culture wars are at play. You're on the right of it. I don't mean right as in correct. But you're on the right of it. Someone like Jamal is on the left. Someone like Jamal is on the left of it. Do you believe, when all is said and done, that what Nike has done has just exacerbated this culture war?
No, because I don't think anybody cares. Like I said, Kaepernick is not relevant enough.
Come on, people are burning their shoes. People are angry enough to burn their shoes. These are good shoes.
You've got 9 or 10 YouTube videos of people burning their shoes in a country at 330 million. Yes, most people, a lot of people don't care what Colin Kaepernick is. But more importantly, Colin Kaepernick is promoting a false narrative. The numbers simply don't bear out what Kaepernick is arguing and Jamal is arguing. In the United States, blacks and whites interact with the police in the same numbers, despite whites being a far greater percentage of the population, about 6 times greater. Of 100 police interactions, 40 are with blacks, 40 are with whites. This is numbers bared down by the FBI, the U.S. Census Bureau, and the Center for Disease Control. In those interactions, U.S. police are shooting whites twice as often and killing them as they are black. So Colin Kaepernick's evidence are YouTube videos and anecdotal stories. The math, the numbers, don't bear out this narrative that the police are indiscriminately killing blacks. A quick note about Asada Shakur. She's not just
please stop.
She's on the FBI. Well, let me finish. She's on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list for a jailbreak for the murder of a state trooper, and she's in exile.
I'm totally well aware of it, but I don't want the debate to be about her.
But please
right, fair enough. I'm well aware of it, but I don't want the debate to be about her. Certainly.
Now let's talk about real quick. Black Lives Matter.
This is not about
Colin Kaepernick backs Black Lives Matter.
For him to even get on here and try
what
to.
do we want?
Come on, man.
When do we want them now? This is what Black Lives Matter changed in the street. What do we want? Dead cops. When do we want them now?
First of all, I think we should stay on topic here because this is a whole different subject that I can battle you on. We don't have. I don't think we have much time to really talk about the facts here. The fact that you would sit here and say there's no racial intent of police departments around this country, and you think that police officers are doing an upstanding job. As a former police officer,
you're lying to the public. You're not using data. You're not using data. You're lying to the public based on anecdotal-based-driven arguments.
Come on, man.
You're lying to the public. Data.
Listen,
data.
Okay, John, don't filibuster him. Jamal.
Every time.
Jamal, respond.
Listen, you want me to? I didn't come on here to battle with a Trump fan and a former police officer about police killings. Okay. The fact is, I think we should stay on topic here. You had your time. He loves to come on and hog the show like he did last time. Listen, at the end of the day, we have real problems in this country when it comes to interactions with the police department. Okay, when it comes to community relations, and that's the truth. We have had lots of situations, just like the Jason Van Dyke situation here in Chicago, in which he shot and killed Laquan McDonald, but shot him 16 times. I think that I don't know if John here would agree with that. He's
being prosecuted. He's being prosecuted, right?
Okay.
He's being prosecuted. So, it's one case. Wait, hold on.
You talking about he's being prosecuted. Please tell me, since you're about data and facts, please tell me out of the 1,000 police officers that have killed black people, how many of them have been charged? Please tell me. So let's not get the fact. Don't bring me that, Jason Van Dyke has been prosecuted, because that rarely happens. It rarely happens.
Let me answer it.
It rarely happens.
Let me answer the question. Let me answer the question. You don't charge police officers justifiably killing criminals. They were legal, justifiable shootings.
So he finds them justifiable. Okay, so Jamal, hold on. John and Jamal. Okay.
You're lying again.
Okay, let's both take a breath here. Let's all take a breath here. I'll tell you why. Okay, Jamal and John, I don't have time, but I'm going to invite you guys back on the program once more. We can talk about this.
No, don't bring John back on the program.
Oh, come on. We'll bring you both back on. We'll talk about this specifically.
We'll talk about this specifically. He doesn't want a dissenting opinion.
He was taking a little jibe. Don't take it so seriously, John. Okay, so Jamal and John and Bryn, I thank you all for joining us here on the Newsmakers. Talk to you next time.
Thanks for having me.